Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Indie Grounds podcast. Today, we have a brand new episode, and it's going to be a little bit different take on an indie artist because he is seen as a musician, but he's also just kind of seen as an entertainer, as a stand-up comic. And the person I have chosen to talk about today is YouTuber, musician, comedic Bo Burnham. Now, as you know, I've started a YouTube channel. I love YouTube. I watch YouTube more than TV itself. And Bo Burnham has definitely been on my radar before. I had seen his earlier things. And after watching a few of his specials, especially the inside specials, I decided to use him as an indie artist. Because in my eyes, this is kind of just giving you some context. A lot of people who became musicians, I personally think from YouTube, deserve to be included in the indie conversation. I don't know if that's correct or not. You can feel free to put it in the comments, how you feel about it. But in my eyes, it's all self-made. It's all self-generated, especially from the early days of YouTube. In fact, I think pretty much coming up, I want to schedule Joji on this list as well. But without further ado, Bo Burnham, we're going to talk about how he rose through YouTube, how he got through his comedy specials, and then, of course, the Inside special on Netflix, to how he's responded to his personal controversies as well. So not much is said about him and his early days, which is on purpose, which we're going to get to later because of his battling anxiety and being a private person. But he did grow up on the East Coast, I believe in Massachusetts. He was a normal childhood, kind of upper middle class, and he got to go through a prep school, I believe, through his mom working at the prep school. So he got to go in for either a discounted price or for free. He majored in theater. He started focusing on that and on music. And he did get into a college in New York City, but what I saw in research is he ended up never actually attending the college, because this is back in the earliest days of YouTube. So you got to think like 2008, 2009, 2010. And if you know any of the OG YouTubers, they all kind of followed the same formula of they were all like in their early 20s, and they didn't want to go to university, even though a lot of them were going to college at the time. And they ended up focusing more on YouTube and kind of just left college in the dust. Bo Burnham was one of those people. That's exactly what he did. He just wasn't interested in it. And it's kind of interesting how he got his start even into music and into YouTube. He pretty much started in that satire kind of comedy, but putting it to piano or to a guitar. And it was mostly small. It was mostly him just focusing on, making fun of life as a teenager, to making fun of his family, kind of the basic YouTube formula. And back then, you couldn't really even promote your things on YouTube itself. You had to kind of get your YouTube channel promoted to like entertainment avenues, whether it was magazines, websites, whatever. And that's exactly what happened. He started to create so much buzz that he started being asked to tour, especially different college campuses. And what happened was, one specific college booked him unknowing, kind of not knowing what his material was on, but the students knew what it was on. And they boycotted the performance, but that actually ended up giving him even more notoriety to people. And he was invited to the House of Blues through I think it's called House of Laughs back then on Comedy Central. And that's where he taped his first Words documentary. And as you can imagine, that got huge publicity. He started performing at more, stand-up comedy shows and started touring the country more. And a lot of people know, again, he's still going strong on YouTube at the time as well. Now, at this period of time, and that kind of leads into his second documentary, which I believe is What? I hope I'm not missing a documentary in the middle. But in 2013, What came out. And that was a full-blown, comedy stand-up special. And it was filmed in front of a live audience. It was filmed in San Francisco. And that kind of had one of his first biggest music hits, on top of it being a good Comedy Central, or comedy routine, I'm sorry. But Repeat Stuff, one of his comedy songs, which is a ripoff of making fun of pop love songs, and how they kind of become popular by just repeating a singular word phrase. You got to check it out if you haven't listened to it. And it just blew up, it just blew up. It started going on MTV. The YouTube video has over 20 million views, and it got big, it got massively big. Now, what started happening during that performance was he was noticing he was starting to have panic attacks on stage. But he chalked that up to just kind of being nervous, being new to this material. But as a lot of Bo Burnham fans know, this is going to be kind of key and crucial as we move along the story here. So that was his first breakout performance. That was 2013. And then in 2016, that was his next comedy special. And that was performed under the title Make Happy. Now, Make Happy was very similar in the style of What, where it was a mix of kind of that satire comedy, of that music satire comedy, where he would kind of play something really quickly, and then he would just move along. He performed a lot of vocal effects and a lot of transitions and so on and so forth, and a lot of kind of like hip-hop songs as well. But it was massive. And what got it even bigger was he dealt with some heckling in the special, but then ironically, which maybe, it set him up perfectly, the very last song, Can't Handle This, starts making fun of the way that men in popular culture deal with their emotions, specifically Kanye West, where he started ranting about, him not selling well and people not understanding him. And what's interesting is he takes that concept in that song. He starts talking about, not fitting his hand inside of Pringles cans, if everyone knows what I'm talking about here. And also overfilled or overstuffed burritos. But then using that word picture of both of those things, he starts talking about anxiety, stage anxiety, his relationship with the audience. And all of it is just layered over and over behind of like a hip-hop beat, orchestral strings behind him as well. You have to watch it. You absolutely have to watch it. I'm going to have a full breakdown of kind of like Bo's music makeup at the very end of this, but yeah, you got to watch it if you haven't. Just type in YouTube, Bo Burnham, Kanye rant. It'll be the first thing that pops up. But as a lot of people know, this is when he got his second biggest panic attack. And it happened after the special was over, almost, I think, immediately after the special was over. He just broke down crying and sobbing for hours. And of course, he realized that performing live was messing very much with his mental health. And so he stopped performing stand-up comedy altogether. Was almost immediately after that special. However, he himself did not stop working. He did stop performing live, as I said, but he actually started either collaborating with other people's work, or he even made his own films called Promising Young Woman, 8th Grade. 8th Grade was performed and made in 2018, and then Promising Young Woman was made in 2020, which leads to the biggest thing, arguably, that he has done so far. And in 2021, he made, I guess you could call it a comedy special, but some people call it a musical special. Other people call it just performance art. And what it was right in the midst of the COVID pandemic. It was released on Netflix, so also kind of like his biggest distributor. But it was called Bo Burnham Inside. And so one day I want to just do a full breakdown of this whole special itself because it is absolutely amazing. He talks about almost everything that everyone experienced during lockdown. You know, it talks about life, you know, just living inside. It talks about life on the internet. It talks about the internet in general. It talks about climate change, social movements, technology, social media, live streaming, video games. But then also the bigger things. He kind of circles back to his anxiety and his depression and his mental health. And in one of his songs, All Eyes on Me, he directly references his breakdown after one of his comedy specials. It was a massive, massive thing, especially since during that time, that's when a lot of people were still inside dealing with the pandemic. And it just got massive, even critical acclaim, where it was lined up for Emmys and Grammys, and it did win several awards as well. And all of it was shot, recorded, edited, scripted by him. He did every single thing by himself, and absolutely amazing. You know, if you want an inside look on the pandemic, you definitely have to watch that Inside special. And that's sort of where we leave him off today. You know, he kind of did a follow-up where he released some behind-the-scenes footage, some new songs from that special, but that's pretty much where we're at today with him. Now, like many early YouTubers, kind of the last thing to bring out, early YouTubers deal many times with controversies. A lot of times, especially during the early days of YouTube, you really had to stand out by doing or saying more and more shocking things that rattled people. And so his use of language with homophobia, his use of language with racial tensions and even racial slurs has gotten people upset. In fact, that's even why he was boycotted off of that first college gig. And of course, he says it's ironic because he worked with a black-owned movie that he collaborated with in 2020, Promising Young Woman. And then he said even with the homophobia things, it was ironic to him because he said those very same slurs he was called himself back in high school. So again, a lot of times with those early YouTubers, it's very hard to tell with that. But I mean, a lot of people can at least acknowledge, you know, back then they used more and more shocking things to get more and more of a reaction from people, especially since there was no oversight back then. So that's where Bo Burnham stands today. Again, I don't really know where you fit him, but I mean, if you've seen Inside, you gotta admit that his usage of music that's the heaviest usage of music back then is during that Inside special. You know, I mean, again, he was nominated for a Grammy. And I mean, I'm not going to guess what he's going to do next, but I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of stays along this same route of doing more so music rather than stand-up. But time will tell. We're going to have to see. Anyways, that's what I had for the podcast this week. I hope you all enjoy it, and I will talk to you all later.